from members of the DoD testimony, members of our committee. It references information was supposedly provided to the committee. Unfortunately, even though both majority and minority staff requested this information several weeks ago, it was not provided. DoD did provide it to the Senate Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship, who were kind enough to share it with us last night after DoD told staff they couldn't get the information. I'd like to say that's not right. It's not fair. It wastes our time, and generally, there's no excuse for it. It hindered the ability of this committee to provide thorough and thoughtful oversight. I'd remind our witnesses that what happens in this room is for the public good, and we're here for the benefit, and they deserve better than this. So that's directed to you, Mr. Wesley, with all due respect. So but I think it's only fair if I give you a minute to respond.
It was provided to both the HASC and the SASC in previous requests for information. When we went to provide it to you, it was held up because they hadn't been cleared a second time. So that's the process of the department to get items cleared before we can release it. So now that we're going through that process to get it re-cleared for you, and it will be provided. It was not our intention to hide it or keep it from you.
Yeah,
Let me make that clear.
I believe you because I know it's out there, but the problem is we might not have had this hearing at this date had we known that there was information that wasn't provided that should have been provided.
And just for the record, so you know.
It makes our hearing incomplete.
And just for the record, that was not requested of me weeks ago. It was requested of me on a phone call on Friday. All right? So when I get weeks ago, and that's what you just read to me, it was provided and requested of me on a phone call Friday. And I did agree to submit it, but I had to go through the proper clearance to do so. And it will be provided as requested.
Right. Well, I'd suggest to you that your staff, whoever told you Friday, is culpable.
No, that was on a phone call with your staff, sir.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. No, apparently we talked to you 2 weeks ago, but that's, you know, we all know where we are in this. Would you like to say anything about this before we move on?
No.
All right, thank you. Let's get to the point, right? Thank you very much. Thank you for being here, everyone. Federal government has long seen the value of having successful businesses mentor small and emerging businesses. 13 federal programs have sprung up to encourage mentor-protege relationships. However, a 2011 Government Accountability Office report questioned the long-term effectiveness of these programs. At that time, the subcommittee examined these programs and examined whether some inadvertently led small businesses to make decisions that would ultimately disqualify them from federal contracting. In other words, in its effort to help small businesses, the federal government may have harmed those small businesses. As a result, this committee included improvements to the Civilian Agency and Small Business Administration Mentor-Protégé programs as part of the National Defense Reauthorization Act for 2013. I'd like to say, too, that Chairwoman Ranking Member Hsu was part of that at the time, right? She actually led that. As SBA is beginning to implement these changes, now is the right time to ask 3 questions. The first question is obvious. Are the changes the SBA is making are improving the operation of civilian agency and government-wide mentor-protege programs? The second question goes to the heart of the problem. How are SBA and the Department of Defense, DoD, defining success under the various programs, and are we able to see if any programs deliver on its promises? The third question, duplication. While there may be a need for separation of DoD mentorship programs, are there better ways to harmonize all the mentor-protege programs? Mentor-protege programs require both parties to invest significant time and resources. Federal agencies provide incentives for mentors to make these commitments and must also approve and oversee the programs. We owe it to the taxpayer and program participants alike to ensure that federal mentor-protege programs ultimately increase the competitive viability of small contractors so that we can all reap the benefits of a healthier industrial base. I look forward to hearing from your testimony today And I turn to the ranking member for her opening comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this important hearing. I'm happy to be here today to fill in for Congressmember Takai, the ranking member of the Contracting and Workforce Subcommittee. With over $400 billion spent for goods and supplies, the federal procurement marketplace provides an important customer base for small business. However, the total volume and value of contracts has declined over the last several years, largely due to budget constraints and sequestration. This has led to greater competition between firms as fewer contracting dollars are available. Given these challenges, the tools and programs available to small businesses play a vital role in enabling small businesses to break into the federal marketplace. Today's hearing will allow us to focus on the Mentor-Protégé program and what it means for small firms. Through Mentor-Protégé programs, small businesses are able to receive a broad array of business development assistance through various methods, including training, obtaining certifications, and in some cases, receiving loans or non-competitive subcontract awards. These benefits not only help protégé firms contract with the government, but also assist them in building up their capacity. Doing so enables them to successfully compete in the marketplace at the conclusion of their Mentor-Protégé agreement. Small businesses are not only the beneficiaries of these programs, they also incentivize large companies to match with a protégé firm. However, there are concerns that Mentor-Protégé programs have become too focused on providing incentives to mentors rather than ensuring protégés actually receive their designated benefits. In fact, GAO previously found that while certain programs had policies in place to ensure that participants benefited from the various Mentor-Protégé programs, the information regarding the ability of the protégé to compete for contracts without the mentors was not available because agencies did not collect data on protégés after the conclusion of the agreement. And while some programs have policies to ensure that participants benefit from the Mentor-Protégé programs, GAO found that conclusory data collection was inadequate. In fact, we don't know if protégé companies are able to successfully compete for contracts without their mentors because agencies neglect to collect that type of information. Furthermore, several groups have expressed frustration regarding the lack of parity between small business eligibility rules in the various Mentor-Protégé programs. As a result of these findings, many changes have been made or proposed to the existing Mentor-Protégé programs. Congress passed legislation that would require SBA to approve Mentor-Protégé programs at civilian agencies to ensure that proper controls were put in place. In fact, in the 112th Congress, when I served as ranking member of the Contracting and Workforce Subcommittee, I worked with Congressmember Schilling to introduce the Building Better Partnerships Act. This bill, which was incorporated into the 2013 NDAA and eventually was passed into law, required SBA to expand their program to include other small business subgroups that had previously been excluded. Earlier this year, SBA finally released the proposed rule for these changes, and the final rules are expected to be released early next year. However, changes to Mentor-Protégé programs have not been limited to civilian programs. Despite metrics showing growth in its small business participants, many changes were made to the DoD's Mentor-Protégé program. These changes reflect growing doubt that the program is effectively executing its mandated goal, and others worry that the program's cost reimbursement tool is not being properly utilized by some mentor firms. But because the program is not permanent and requires reauthorization, these concerns may never be addressed. In order to do so, Congress must reach a compromise on a fair NDAA that protects the future of this program. We know these programs make a difference to small businesses. We've seen many instances of their success. It is my hope that today's hearing will shed light on how the various Mentor-Protégé programs are aiding small businesses that compete in the federal marketplace. I look forward to hearing about the steps that DoD and SBA are taking to ensure that these small firms are in fact benefiting from their Mentor-Protégé agreements. With that, I thank the witnesses for testifying, and I yield back.
Thank you. If members have opening statements prepared, I ask they submit them for the record. You have 5 minutes. When the light goes yellow, you have another minute. We'll be lenient. We have a small panel today, and I think we'll have time. So we do want to hear what you have to say. Before we get started, I'd like to welcome Congressman Bridenstine, who is joining us today for the purposes of this hearing. Thank you for being here, sir. We have one panel today. Our first witness is John Shurika, the Associate Administrator for Government Contracting and Business Development at the Small Business Administration. His office has jurisdiction over size standards, small business goaling, and contracting regulation, as well as the government contracting and business development programs. Our second witness today is Mr. Kenyatta, thank you. L. Wesley, the Acting Director of Small Business Programs at the Department of Defense. Mr. Wesley is responsible for DOT Small Business Program, the Small Business Program and Policy, including the SBIR and STTR and Mentor-Protégé programs. Thank you both for being here. Mr. Shurika, you can begin.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Hanna and Ranking Member Chu and members of the subcommittee. I am honored to be here today to discuss how my agency is implementing changes to the Mentor-Protégé program and the Mentor-Protégé programs of other agencies, as mandated by Section 1347 of the Small Business Jobs Act of 2010 and Section 1641 of the National Defense Authorization Act of 2013. The Small Business Administration has a long-established 8A Mentor-Protégé program, which is designed to enable approved mentors to provide various forms of business development assistance to eligible 8A program participants. This can range from technical and/or managerial assistance, financial assistance in the form of equity investments and/or loans, subcontracts, and/or assistance in performing federal prime contracts through joint venture arrangements. The goal of the 8A Mentor-Protégé relationship is to enhance the overall capability of eligible protégés, improve the protégés' ability to successfully compete for both prime and commercial contract opportunities, and increase their chances for entrepreneurial success upon completion of the 9-year 8A Business Development Program. Success is different for each 8A participant because each mentor-protégé agreement uniquely describes the protégé's specific needs and provides a detailed timeline for delivery of the assistance the mentor commits to provide to address those needs. Protégés receive assistance in developing their infrastructure, building technical experience and past performance, and developing quality management systems. They also receive assistance with obtaining security clearances for their employees and facilities, developing prime contract proposal writing skills, and strengthening their ability to manage finances and general administrative business operations. The 8A mentor-protégé relationship can also enhance the protégé's competitiveness with both 8A and non-8A contract awards, as larger, more established mentors can enter into joint venture agreements with protégés to compete for certain federal government contracts and subcontracts. Currently, there are 389 active 8A mentor-protégé agreements in SBA's portfolio and 141 SBA-approved 8A mentor-protégé joint ventures. In fiscal year 2015, 8A joint venture obligations were valued at $1.42 billion. This includes both 8A and non-8A procurements. One of SBA's top priorities is to ensure that the benefits of its contracting programs flow to the intended recipients, and oversight of the agency's 8A Mentor-Protégé program is conducted annually by SBA District Business Opportunity Specialists and the headquarter offices of Continuing Eligibility Review. Each year, mentor-protégé relationships are reviewed to ensure that teams continue to meet the objectives of the program and to monitor activities to mitigate any potential risks associated with fraud, waste, and abuse. At least annually, the SBA evaluates the success of the mentor-protégé relationship to ensure that each protégé received the business development assistance promised to it under its agreement and that the relationship continues to be a benefit to the protégé firms. Over the past several years, Congress has significantly broadened the scope of SBA's mentor-protégé authority. The Jobs Act of 2010 enabled the agency to expand the mentor-protégé program to include all other socioeconomic category participants. Subsequently, in NDAA of 2013, Congress authorized SBA to create a mentor-protégé program to include all small businesses. On February 5, 2015, SBA issued a proposed rule to establish a government-wide small business mentor-protégé program, and the comment period for that proposed rule has since closed. We are currently drafting a final rule that will then be sent for interagency review. SBA has begun planning for implementation and has established a working group to oversee the expansion of the program. NDAA 2013 also required the SBA to review the Mentor-Protégé program of other agencies within 1 year of implementing the final rule to determine whether they should continue. The Department of Defense's program was specifically excluded. SBA is committed to the full expansion of the Mentor-Protégé program, and across the administration, we're committed to ensuring that more small businesses have access to programs that will enable them to compete for more contracting opportunities, grow their businesses, and create jobs in our communities. As Administrator Contreras-Sweet highlighted in her priority speech, the SBA will be a market maker for small companies by opening new business channels within the federal government. I want to thank you for your continued leadership and support, and I look forward to your questions.
For the opportunity to speak today about the Department of Defense Mentor-Protégé program and how we serve small businesses. I would like to take the time to explain to you that the Mentor-Protégé program is not just a tool for us, but it's one of the most important tools of us in the department to control, grow, and mentor our industrial base. The actual Mentor-Protégé program for us, unlike our partners at the SBA, is not just about job growth. It's truly about actually having companies around that can actually ramp up in a time of any war or contingency environment that may arise. The Mentor-Protégé program allows us to actually get new ideas into the department and teach small businesses how to actually perform and function within the role of DoD. Without that, small businesses have an impasse, and often when it comes down to actually doing business with the department, not just with security regulations and policies, but also with accounting regulations and policies, being able to perform cost-type contracting and receive those endorsements and certifications. Safety requirements that DoD often requires to work on installations when it comes to manufacturing becomes vital. And so having a mentor that has already gone through that process, that understands that process, this becomes a valuable tool to remove barriers of entry into the department. DoD was the first agency to have a federal Mentor-Protégé program and become fully operational, and is the only federal agency currently required by statute to collect information on protégés after they exit the program, of which we do. So, Ranking Member Chu, we are one of those agencies that actually do track that information and actually provide it back to our sister agency at the SBA of how they perform up to 2 years after the program. So we actually provide those metrics. We actually also collect information on protégés while they're in the program, and I'll discuss that later during the question and answer period. They also have insights eligible to how we measure success, because one of the first things that I did upon arrival 16 to 17 months ago into the department office was to set up a metric program to measure return on investment for the department. And one of the things that we have done to improve the long-term utilization of these companies is we've tied the Mentor-Protégé agreements beginning this year, this fiscal year, to top 10 challenges within the department, commanders' top 10 issues. So that way, they are tied specifically to a program, system of record, or work. So that way, when they actually get after subcontract out with a large prime to get experience, we actually are now trying to combat their #1 issue during source selection, which is past performance. One of the most, I'll say, rigorous challenges that a small business has when they go up and compete against established corporations or established companies is that they are often given a neutral rating when it comes to source selection. It's not, a neutral rating doesn't harm them, but when you're competing against someone who has had decades of successful performance, it does not help you either. And so what we're doing is trying to establish where you can actually receive rating as a subcontractor. Therefore, that would then eliminate their being behind the 8 ball, that's my own phrase, going after a prime contract opportunity. So we're trying to not just build our industrial base, but we want to maintain the industrial base. And the Mentor-Protégé program is one of those tools where we can keep companies afloat when it's not a time of war or contingency operation. Because now they can receive subcontract opportunities at maybe at lower values, but it keeps the doors open so that way when we need them, they are around to ramp up in the future. So in closing, I would like to just state that I would thank you all for this opportunity. I look forward to the remainder of our dialogue, and I will be free to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wesley. I'm going to ask Congresswoman Shu, Ranking Member Shu, to ask the first question. Her knowledge in this subject is much greater than anyone else on this panel, I'm guessing. So, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Wesley, thank you for collecting that data during and after the protégés do leave. Mr. Shiraka, the Mentor-Protégé programs are very important to me. In the 112th Congress, as you heard, I helped introduce the Building Better Business Partnerships Act, which was incorporated into the 2013 NDAA. And I also introduced an amendment which passed into law, which allowed for mentor-protege agreements to be grandfathered into the new program until the expiration date of their agreement. I'd like to follow up on the implementation of this amendment. Have you seen these pre-existing agreements fitting into the program, and what steps is SBA taking to ensure that these existing mentor-protege programs are still honored?
Thank you for that question. We have done an inventory of the existing mentor-protege programs at various agencies, and there are a number of agencies that currently have mentor-protege programs. There are very different and unique from the Small Business Administration's mentor-protege program. At an agency, typically you look at a prime-sub relationship where the mentor is the prime and the protege is the sub. We have had long discussions with the agencies that have current plans about how those get implemented into ours, as well as potentially continue on under our umbrella, because they are unique and different from the joint venture mentor-protege program that the SBA has. I think both in the sense of other agencies' programs as well as the Department of Defense's program. They are different and provide a different tool for the development of proteges.
Mm-hmm. My amendment also clarified that program regulations must protect proteges against actions that negatively impact them or provide disproportionate benefits to the mentor. I introduced this amendment to ensure that mentors do not receive more benefits from the programs than their proteges. How is SBA working to make sure that this safeguard is being implemented?
Thank you. One of the major points that we want to address in implementing this, because is fraud, waste, and abuse, and protecting the protege. In the 8A program, the Business Opportunity Specialist has an annual review which looks at implementation of the joint ventures and making sure that the protege is receiving their fair share of the contract. We want to make sure, as we expand this exponentially to include all small businesses, that we implement some checks and balances to make sure that there is a review process, there is a reporting structure where at least on an annual basis, a joint venture reports to the division of contract between the protege and the mentor. It is, I think one of the issues that we have is that we have limited resources within the SBA. The BOSs service the 8A companies. As this gets expanded exponentially, how do we make sure that we have checks and balances so that a reporting structure is in place to address just the concerns that you raised?
And are those reports available to us?
The reports with respect to the
checks and balances.
Yeah, we're in the process of establishing a pilot program to expand the mentor-protege program across the federal agency. So once there are reports, we're certainly happy to share.
Let me ask about funding. When Congress mandated the mentor-protege programs for the small business subgroups, there were no funds available for their implementation. SBA's estimated that at least 2,000 firms could become active in the proposed mentor-protege program. Does SBA currently have the resources necessary to handle such a large number of first-time new applicants?
I think that's a very important question, because as you pointed out, certainly this is a tool for development for the proteges, but one of our main concerns is making sure that the protege is benefiting and receiving its fair share, both of the contracts under a joint venture, but also in receiving the benefits that the Mentor-Protégé plan outlines for the protege to receive. Certainly, if the program is expanded, as you mentioned, from the 389 that are in the 8A program now to over 2,000 potentially, it could have a significant impact on our resources. And as you mentioned, there weren't additional resources provided to the SBA. So it will, we intend to launch this next summer as a pilot program to determine what the impact is, and from there decide how it's implemented fully, making sure that the benefits flow to the intended recipients.
Thank you. My time is up, and I yield back.
Thank you. The FY16 NDAA would have required DoD to assess affiliations between potential mentors and proteges prior to admitting them to the program. This raises three questions, and they go to both of you. The first, is there a reason to believe that there is an affiliation between prospective mentors and proteges before they enter the program? Second, does DoD have the capability to perform this assessment? Third, does SBA have any concerns allowing another agency to make these determinations?
I'm happy to start off. I think under our rules, any statutory mentor-protege program, when it comes to affiliation, any assistance that is received from the mentor to the protege in determining potential affiliation is exempted. In other words, if you have a mentor-protege relationship under the DoD program, which is a statutory program.
We're asking a little bit about before they enter the
Beforehand.
program. Yeah.
The beforehand is, certainly we don't currently look at affiliation in the Department of Defense with respect to a mentor-protege agreement, right? But where we would address that is in case of a protest. So if there is a protest based on the relationship previously from the mentor to the protege, is where we would review that and determine if affiliation exists. But we don't currently, as a matter of practice,
So it would
do
be
that on
an
the front
after
end.
the fact brought on by a third
A
party.
protest. Or an interested party, including a contracting officer.
From a DoD perspective, we actually do currently review and make sure that there were no previous relationships prior to the agreement being signed. So all companies can come in and apply, but we actually do a thorough review. And in fact, just last year, I implemented a review at the OSD level of all agreements from the services. The services still have the ability to approve their agreements, but they don't approve them until a gentleman by the name of Robert Stewart, who I actually assigned as the program manager, has reviewed that, and he checks. One of the things that he checks for is whether or not the agreement is there an agreement in place before, or whether they have a prior relationship beforehand. Mm-hmm. So we do validate that prior. The last question I believe you asked was, do we have the ability? I think I've answered that by saying we're already doing it. So
let me ask something. You mentioned part of this is to create a bank, if you will, of companies that are ready to go. How can you, I mean, that makes sense, right, on its face, but you mentioned in your opening statement that part of what you want to do is keep these companies in business, doing business after they leave. How do you do that and maintain the integrity of the bidding process in terms of competitiveness, being a low bidder? I mean, it would sound as though you just have to find a way to keep these companies going. I hope that isn't the case.
No, so the competition process tends to work itself out, all right? But what we do is during the source selection or during the creating of a contract language, if a contracting officer wants to give credit for a company being in the Mentor-Protégé program, they advertise that up front. So that way it's in the competitive documents prior to.
Are there rules around the points that can be given?
No, meaning we don't give bonus points to that, but what we do is we say highly encouraged to utilize a mentor-protege firm, and that way they are entitled or are allowed to actually to go out and utilize them prior to going out and signing a new agreement.
What
with
standard do
someone.
you use to establish that recommendation?
So as far as what, sir? Can you
I
clarify
mean,
the
if you're
question?
going to say that, you must have a reason.
Yes. So what we are trying to do is encourage the use of the program at a higher level and actually make it a focused usage. Because what we're wanting to do, when I came on board, one of the things I looked at is how many companies were around after they graduated the program, but how many were actually receiving work on a continuous basis. And that, to me, is a monitor of success for the program.
Do you use a subjective method to say, maybe this company, there's not as much need for what they do, as opposed to there's enough in the marketplace?
No. So
Or
what
is
we
everybody
do is,
just treated?
no, everyone's treated fairly on this. So what happens is it's based on the type of work that's going out for contract. So the synergies, that's where the synergies are leveraged. So if I'm going out for an engineering support contract, and I'm going out for communications and electronics, and a large business has a Mentor-Protégé agreement with a specific small business that specializes in electronic chip making or circuit boards or things like that, they would then be able to use their Mentor-Protégé agreement in accordance with that contract. And it would then allow them to actually feed work into their small business that they've been working with, partnering with, that they understand, that they are already doing business with on a continuous basis. It won't, obviously, that's not a large $20 million, $30 million prime contract, but it's enough to keep that company around because we are encouraging them to continue to be around.
Congressman Bridenstine? Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Lawrence? Forgive me.
Thank you. Mr. Wesley, I appreciate the fact that you're collecting information and data on the trends in the Department of Defense, and we're on the same page there. But I wanted to know that when you're looking at these trends and you're actually monitoring these firms after they leave, what is the data showing you? What is the data telling you?
So what we found is over 90% of our applicants believe that the Mentor-Protégé program was successful for them. That's the first thing. And then we found out that over 80% of them found out that their mentors actually did provide some valuable training and or information to them that they would not have been able to get on their own. And that's a key piece because the entire point of the Mentor-Protégé program, as you well know, ma'am, is to actually set up and give these companies information that would have been more difficult for them to achieve on their own and become a viable tool more quickly to our industrial base as well as to the overall department need.
So it sounds like it's working. Why don't we have more currently participating? We have the ability for 2,000 firms, correct? And we're currently at 389.
Actually, I believe we have less active agreements than that, ma'am. I can give you the exact number.
So what do you think that's not for you. That's our buzzer. Tell us what's going on.
So we have 88 total active agreements currently.
They're 88.
88 active.
So how do we grow that?
So one of the things I wanted to do is focus on getting the right agreements in place before we focus on growth.
Okay.
All right, and there was a reason for that. The Mentor-Protégé program, you know, as you all are aware, because you've taken such a great interest in this program, which I thank you for, by the way, it actually, to me, can be misused if you're not careful. And I genuinely want to make sure that the small businesses or the protégés that are actually in there are getting what they specifically need. So we're taking a time to set up the counseling sessions. It's a tiered review approach where we now actually make sure that they're married up with the right company, that they have a good understanding of what the mentor is supposed to give them, all right, and that their relationship is actually clear up front. Because what we found out through our living and learning process here is that sometimes the disputes between a mentor and a protégé happen just because there wasn't clear understanding of what was going to be delivered by the mentor. So what we wanted to do is actually put training programs in place before companies actually begin the agreement. Then we start to grow it as more people understand it and understand how we use it.
So what's your projection of when we'll get to the growth phase?
So I would anticipate, ma'am, you will see steady growth over the next 3 years.
3 years.
Yes, ma'am. And what I mean by steady growth is I'm looking at trying to make sure this year we continue the growth pattern, which we had. We'll add another 30 to 40 agreements this year. And then it will be even higher the following year and then get up into a couple of hundred the next year. Now, new agreements. Let me be clear on that, new agreements. Now, the reason I'm putting that out there is because it's not just about the growth of the program. It's about the effectiveness of the program.
Exactly.
All right. So when you talk about the effectiveness of the program, I'm also talking about the residual usage of the small business firms, because although my job is not to actually generate job growth, it is a second, third, and fourth order effect of our program if we do it right.
So, Mr. Wesley and to Mr. Soraka, one of the frustration I hear in the field with from small businesses is that opportunities like this are available, but they can't seem to get access to it. So my job is to make sure that small businesses are aware of programs. And so when we say that it's available, if someone meets the criteria today, they'll be able to have access. One last question to Mr. Soraka. I am very concerned about opportunities for women-owned businesses and veteran-owned businesses. Specifically, how can they take advantage, and will this program be an advantage for them?
Yeah, I think, first of all, thank you for focusing on the Women-Owned Small Business Program as well as the Service Disabled Veteran Program. Over the years, because of significant focus, both with the support from the Hill as well as the administration, we've been successful in getting more business to both of those socio-categories and expanding the Mentor-Protégé program to include women-owned small businesses, to include service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses, will certainly create additional opportunities for them to participate in the federal procurement process. I, too, want to make sure that businesses are aware of these opportunities. We consistently engage our field staff, our district offices, to make sure that all socio-categories and all small businesses are aware of the opportunities and are trained on how to take advantage of those opportunities. And we certainly partner with the Department of Defense in that instance. We work with the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers. We work with our SBDCs, our Small Business Development Centers, et cetera. But I think there can always be additional work to make sure that the word is out there, and the training, quite frankly, is out there to take advantage of the programs.
Thank you, and I yield back my time. Thank you.
Congressman Bridenstine?
Well, thank you, Chairman Hanna and Ranking Member Chu, for allowing me to attend this hearing and to ask questions. As a member of the House Armed Services Committee, I am well aware of the importance of the Mentor-Protégé program. In fact, the 1st District of Oklahoma, from whence I come, is home to many contractors who participate in the Mentor-Protégé program, especially in the design-build firms. My questions are directed to both witnesses. The way the Mentor-Protégé program is now, if a mentor assists a protégé through a subcontract, in other words, the mentor is the subcontractor, the protégé can be penalized as it runs the risk of being considered affiliated and losing its small business status. If approved by the relevant small business program component director, wouldn't allowing the mentor to subcontract to the protégé in certain circumstances strengthen the Mentor-Protégé program, provided that there is no reimbursement for any performance by the mentor related to the subcontract, or provided that the mentor is not the only or the largest subcontractor under the protégé's prime contract. Often assistance is needed from the mentor in performing complex and unusual aspects of the protégé's contract. Wouldn't allowing the mentor to demonstrate means of performance through a subcontract potentially serve to strengthen the successful development of the protégé? And that's for both of you.
Thank you for that question. Under our program, the relationship that ensues with respect to pursuing contract opportunities is not a prime sub-relationship, but it is a joint venture relationship where the protégé receives or is to receive a good portion of that contract opportunity so as to learn from the mentor with respect to how to implement a larger size contract. In those instances, the protégé is to receive, and this gets a little bit complicated, but the joint venture is to receive 50% at least 50% of the contract. And the protege is to receive 40% of that 50%. But the mentor can, in other words, do 60% of that 50%.
Sure.
I know that gets a little bit complicated. But that relationship provides for exactly what you explained, in the sense of the mentor providing assistance, being able to participate in the contract to a large degree to make sure that the contract is successful, but within that relationship, help the protege grow. That scenario unfolds under the current 8A Mentor-Protégé program, right? And that's the scenario that we are working to unfold for all small businesses as our rule gets finalized and the program is implemented. I understand that in the Department of Defense world, it is a prime sub-relationship, right? And the prime contractor is the mentor, and the subcontractor is usually the protege. And under any of those statutory programs, as the Department of Defense exists, the benefits or the assistance that goes from the mentor or the protege can't be used against the protege, or it can't determine affiliation, right? So that assistance will be excluded if we're looking at a potential affiliation issue. However, the scenario that you pointed out is a scenario where outside of this relationship, affiliation can be found. And certainly, if our area offices, which do the size determinations, find an affiliation and find that protege to be other than small, that protege then has an opportunity to appeal that decision to our Office of Hearing and Appeals. And that really provides...
How long does that process generally take, the appeal?
The appeal process? So the Office of Hearing and Appeals is an independent third body that reviews our determinations. And I don't know, I don't want to say the exact time frame. I believe it's 15 days that they have to determine on that appeal. But that appeal has to be filed within a short period of time if that firm is going to file that appeal.
I'm running out of time here.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And I want to get to my second question, and certainly we can follow up on the record with maybe comments afterwards. My second question is, the DoD Mentor-Protégé allows the mentor to receive credit toward their subcontracting goals if their assistance to the for their assistance to the protege, while the Small Business Administration Mentor-Protégé program currently does not. So the DoD allows the mentor to receive credit towards their subcontracting goals for their assistance, but the SBA does not. This is a significant issue that establishes a strong incentive for a mentor to provide developmental assistance. What, if anything, is the SBA doing to be in line with the DoD MPP on this issue?
Yeah. On our part, as we look, as I had mentioned earlier, the agency programs, in fact, there are other civilian agencies that have programs that are different and unique than the SBA program. And as we look to harmonize those programs as a result of the National Defense Authorization Act of 13, we are looking to see what are some of the benefits that are provided to the mentors and proteges in that unique world, and how can we harmonize that across the federal government. Those are aspects that we're looking at. You're absolutely right. As it stands, under our Mentor-Protégé program, there is no additional subcontracting credit for assistance provided. In trying to harmonize that across the federal government, that may be something that we look at as we implement it federal-wide.
So I'm about a minute and a half over my time, so I'll yield back.
Thank you. Ms. Clark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank our ranking member. I thank our witnesses for being here this morning. Mr. Shiraka, in your testimony, you discussed the SBA's expansion of its Mentor-Protégé program to include service-disabled, veteran-owned small businesses located in historically underutilized business zones, and women-owned small businesses as directed by the Jobs Act of 2010. In the 5 years since, has the SBA implemented Mentor-Protégé programs for these small businesses? And if so, can you update us as to the progress of these programs?
Thank you. The Small Business Jobs Act of 2010 did direct us to expand to the other socio categories, as you mentioned, and we were in the process of drafting the rule to do just that. The National Defense Authorization Act of 2013 authorized us to go well beyond that. It authorized us to go and expand the program to all small businesses. So in effect, we pulled back that rule. We went through the rulemaking process again to expand the program to all small businesses. The rule was put out for public comment last February and has since closed. And we are in the process of taking into account all the comments we received. We received quite a few comments. Taking into account those comments, and we should have a final rule published in the first quarter of 2015. At the same time, as I mentioned in the testimony, we have a working group established that includes all of our field personnel or representation from our field personnel, from our general counsel's office, from government contracting office, to make sure that we implement it in a smart way, but also within the resources that we have at the agency. So we are looking to launch, at least on a pilot basis, the program latter part of the summer of 2016.
So, since the Jobs Act 5 years ago, we're still in the planning phase, is essentially what you're saying? And the expansion of the groups is for all small businesses under the National Defense Act. Is that what
That's
you're
correct.
saying? So my concern is there was a reason why these particular businesses were targeted in the spectrum of businesses, small businesses out there. The concern is that these businesses continue to be underinvested in, undersupported. And do you believe or feel as though once this rule is completed, there will be sufficient resource to pay attention to these businesses?
Thank you for that question. I think that is one of the issues we're grappling with respect to resources, right? As we expand this program exponentially to all small businesses, we need to make sure that we have the resources not only to implement it in a way that benefits the protégés and benefits the women-owned small businesses in the service-disabled community as well as the hub zone community, but in a way that we make sure that any potential risk is addressed as well. In the 8A program, we have the benefit and the opportunity to do annual reviews on the 8A firms, and those with mentor-protégé programs and joint ventures get a review and make sure that the benefits are indeed flowing as planned. Outside of that 8A world, we need to develop mechanisms to make sure that we have similar oversight.
If you could give us a sense at some point in time of what you believe or the agency believes would be sufficient in terms of resource, I really get concerned when we expand, given the fact that there was a specific concern around these particular businesses and where they're located under the Jobs Act. And you know, it's sort of brushed aside to look at a more expansive program. Would you please try to give us a sense of that? Mr. Wesley, in your testimony, you referred to a GAO report which concluded that 93% of protégé firms reported that their participation in the Mentor-Protégé program enhanced their firm's, excuse me, overall capabilities. To what would you attribute that high rate of success, and what could we learn from these successes that we can apply to other government mentorship protégé programs?
I think the first thing we do is we actually sit down and have a pre-meeting with the firms up front. We make sure that they understand exactly what they are, what's expected out of each of them. We have the Mentor-Protégé agreements have clear guidelines as well as deliverables. So it tells you, on the reimbursement side of it, you won't be paid until you have delivered these items. If it's subcontract credit, you won't receive that subcontract credit until these deliverables have been met. We give clear delineation, so therefore we make sure that each party knows exactly what's expected of them. We sit down and make sure that they have a good understanding, because that pre-meeting, you know, I kind of equate to it as marriage counseling, if you will. They get that ahead of time so they can understand that they're on the same page, both on a financial basis understanding, but also from an actual business perspective. Because sometimes business mantras or business visions are different. And we also try to make sure that they marry up to mean whatever the mentor, the protege needs is what the mentor is truly going to provide, and that they have the capability of providing it. There's no need for you to have a mentor go after guiding a protege for a top secret SCI clearance when they don't have one themselves. They don't know how to go through and get one. So we're trying to make sure that they actually have the skills to deliver on what they're promising to deliver. I think that's one of the biggest items that I can attribute that to, is the pre-discussions ahead of time.
And have you had an opportunity to just sort of look at how these mentor-protege relationships are gelling, if you will, and whether in fact we have models that could be used by SBA to expand the program?
I can tell you that the one thing I will tell the entire committee and go on record is that myself and the Small Business Administration are communicating regularly. I have biweekly meetings with John Shiraka and his team. We are sharing information, and to answer your question specifically, I do believe that we will be sharing not just our metrics and how we track information, but the tools we use. And I believe that we do have some working models that we can share with them at any given time going forward. So yes, ma'am, I do believe we can do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've gone over my time and I yield back.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. You're both well prepared and clearly know your subject matter. If there are no further questions for these witnesses, I want to thank you again for your testimony. Given the President's veto of FY16 NDAA, and we hope to work through that, the future of the DoD Mentor-Protégé program is in limbo. Congress must act to reauthorize the program, and as we do, I hope we'll consider making the appropriate reforms. Likewise, as the SBA moves to finalize its rules on government-wide and civilian agency-specific mentor-protege agreements, I hope it will do so and trust it will do so thoughtfully. I also hope we are all agreed that the mentor-protege program must be successfully demonstrate benefits to the companies, the taxpayers, by ensuring that these small businesses are better able to compete for contracts when they exit the program. I look forward to working with my colleagues on these issues, and thank you all for your participation today. With that, this hearing is over. Oh, everyone has 5 legislative days to amend. I should know that by now. I ask unanimous consent that members have 5 legislative days to submit statements and supporting materials for the record. Without objection, so ordered, this hearing is now adjourned. Thanks, guys.